Ah yes, Outlast. The game that everybody's already played or watched their favorite Markiplier play.
It's awfully bright.
I finally got around to playing it this year, and I can say, it's a game. Now I know that sounds like I didn't enjoy it, but I really did. Even if it doesn't look like it. It's now one of my favorite horror games of all time. If you want to watch my full playthrough, I stream the entire game on Twitch, and it will be linked below. Please follow me, I beg. Outlast was released in 2013 and developed by Red Barrels, a Canadian game studio founded by Philip Morin, David, and Hugo Dallaire. The founders are actually formerly from other big franchises such as Assassin's Creed and Uncharted. Outlast was the first game they released. They had another unnamed project that was centered around nanotechnology, but it was later cancelled for unknown reasons. Funny enough, some of that stuff still kind of made its way into Outlast. So how about we actually start talking about the game this video is about? We play as Miles Upshur, a journalist who receives an email about terrible things happening at Mount Massive Asylum. Mount Massive is owned by Murkoff Corporation. In the email, the whistleblower states that there is illegal activity and people are getting hurt, and something about dream therapy. So Miles does the only logical thing, grabs his camera and goes to Mount Massive. What could possibly go wrong? Once we arrive at Mount Massive, Miles parks his Jeep at the entrance and the gate closes behind him. Fun. Honestly, I'm not even sure how he got through the gate in the first place. There's no one manning the controls. Anyway, we start heading towards the front of the asylum and notice the absence of people.
That seems fun.
And armored SWAT vans at the door. What could possibly go wrong? The game then tells us how to sprint, so that's how you know it's gonna get good. With all the doors locked, we start looking for another way in, cause why wouldn't we? We find a gate with the bottom bent perfectly to fit somebody through. How convenient. Then we start climbing some scaffolding to make our way to an open window.
I hate this.
Once we make our way inside, the lights cut out and we learn that our camera has night vision. Then we can make our way into the hallway, and it's blocked off, so we have to go to the next room. We then experience our first jump scare of the game.
I don't like this.
After that, we get back into the hallway and squeeze our way through a tight gap and find a door covered in blood. If we go inside, we can find our first document of the game. Documents are blue folders with confidential on the front. Reading through them reveals more of the story and the secrets. The first document tells us about something called Project Walrider, and that someone named Billy has claimed to have progressed to self-directed lucid dream states. It also informs us that Billy's mother has filed a lawsuit against Murkoff and the asylum. The note does not inform us whether or not the lawsuit was successful, but just of its existence. Once we continue on, someone shuts us out of the bathroom and we have no choice but to climb into an air vent. Once in the air vent, we can see said bathroom goer run out of the bathroom, leaving the door locked, so good luck if you gotta go. Once we make it out of the air vent, we enter the library, getting jump scared again. We then find a soldier who has got himself into a bit of a pickle. He then informs us about variants and that they got out. According to him, you can only run or hide, no fighting back. Which actually leads me to talk about Outlast's main gameplay loop. Outlast is a survival game. There are no weapons or any way to defend yourself. You must run or hide to escape enemies. There's different hiding spots scattered around the map. You can hide in lockers, under beds, or just scurry behind a door and hope that nobody sees you. Now, hiding isn't a foolproof plan. Sometimes you just have to run. Enemies can also check hiding spots, so you have to make sure they don't see you get into one. One of the best ways to do this is to run away and close the door behind you. Enemies take a couple seconds to bust the doors down, so it can buy you a window to get into a hiding spot without being seen. And like I said before, there's no fighting, so if you try to fight, you will die. Anyway, back to the story. The soldier then tells us we can escape by unlocking the main doors from the security control. Seems simple enough, right? Once we leave him to die, we meet our first variant, Chris Walker. Walker was a former employee of Murkoff. He was a surveillance officer for the therapy sessions. He was then found out to be the culprit of a few murders. Surveying what he had, it must have caused him to go insane, starting his killing spree. Eventually, Murkoff captured him and blamed the killings on somebody else, who they then used in experiments. After our lovely encounter with Chris, he then throws us off the second floor and we just get up and shrug it off. After some running around, we end up finding a dead guy in a toilet, and probably the more important thing, the security room. But unfortunately, it needs a key card. After some more strange encounters, we finally get the key card.
I'm gonna borrow that from you.
Once we get back to the security room, we start to access the security system. But someone cuts the power. Once we get light, we hear the big man himself calling out to us. Then we must run away from him after hiding for a bit. Then we find our way into the sewers so we can turn the power back on.
Nerd.
After some shenanigans, we finally get the power back on, and once we make our way back to the security room, we get drugged and kidnapped. Some guy tells us we can't leave yet and shows us the wall rider. If you paid close attention to the documents so far, you can find out that the wall rider is an experiment done by Murkoff to have somebody take control of a ghostly entity. The wall rider is a swarm of nanites, but it appears invisible to the naked eye. I don't know how much information you can find by this point in the game. I didn't read half the documents I found because I'm lazy, but who cares if I'm telling the story in a slightly out of order way, right? Please don't bully me. The man who drugged us is Father Martin. Once we passed out, he actually put us in a prison cell. What a kind fellow. Once we get out, we meet the twins. After escaping the jail, we are told to follow the blood. After following the blood for a while, we have another encounter with Chris. And after some other wacky shenanigans, we make our way to the male ward. After running from some nice gentlemen, a mysterious voice tells us to get into a dumbwaiter to survive. Obviously, it was a trap, so we get knocked out, and this is where we get introduced to Richard Traeger. Traeger then suspects that we are working with Father Martin and offers us a break. He then locks us in a wheelchair, takes us around the male ward. Sounds like a nice break if I've ever seen one.
I personally believe that they should just open the door and just let me go home.
After teasing us with an open door, he takes us to a bathroom, flashes us, and proceeds to cut some of our fingers off. After he's done with that, Miles escapes. After running around aimlessly for a few minutes, we find an elevator. Once we get in the elevator, Traeger catches us, and Miles proceeds to shove him into the open door and crush him with the elevator.
Just, record that for good measure.
After that whole encounter, we meet back up with Father Martin, who then tells us to meet him outside. On our way out, we find somebody burning the asylum down, probably the most sane person here. We then find some valves to put out the fire, clearing our way to make it outside. Once we make it there, we finally see the wall rider in person. Here we can learn that the wall rider is visible to the camera's night vision, but invisible otherwise. After some snooping around outside, we then get told to find Father Martin in the female ward. Once we make it to the female ward, we then have to do some hardcore parkour and make it to a door. In the process, Miles loses his camera. We cannot progress without the camera, so finding the camera it is. Once we get our camera back, we meet someone telling us about a key to the House of God. After watching the next Hollywood blockbuster, we find our key and continue on with our journey. Once we finally make it to the church, we meet Father Martin again, but this time he's tied up to a cross and proceeds to light himself on fire and burn himself alive. After that fiasco, we find ourselves heading down the elevator and brought to a very out of place area. Once we get down here, it's plastered with Project Wall Rider. We find various testing rooms and a random window that looks like it goes out to a desert. We then encounter the Wall Rider again, but this time he is chasing us. Chris Walker comes around trying to kill us, but the Wall Rider kills Chris Walker by throwing him into a vent and blending him up. He then scurries away not to be seen for a while. We then find a room with a man in a wheelchair. This man is Rudolph Wernicke, the lead scientist behind the Wall Rider. He then explains how he should be dead, but William Hope keeps him alive, thinking Wernicke is his father. William Hope is Billy, by the way. He then tells us why he is here and why he agreed to help Murkoff. Profit. Wernicke then instructs us to turn off Billy's life support, hopefully killing him and the Wall Rider. After this conversation, we then go on a quest to do just that, kill the Wall Rider. After much effort, Miles successfully shuts off Billy's life support, killing him, but the Wall Rider is still alive. The Wall Rider then possesses Miles. We then receive the objective, get out. In a lot of pain, Miles then stumbles his way to get out of Mount Massive. On his way, he's stopped by an army of armed soldiers and Wernicke. They then proceed to gun down Miles. Presumably so he cannot release Murkoff's secrets. All the videos, documents, and terrible things that happened to Miles during his adventure at Mount Massive, it was all for nothing. And that's the end of Outlast. It's a very interesting game with a scary story. If you did not know, Outlast is actually inspired by some real-world events that occurred named Project MK Ultra, confirmed by the multiple copies of real MK Ultra documents in the game. Now, I'm not going to go into MK Ultra, there are plenty of YouTube videos on it. And yeah, this is not the end of the Outlast story. There is still the DLC Whistleblower, which I have already played and recorded. I plan on covering it in another video here soon, but for now, that's the end of the story. In Whistleblower, you play as the original sender of the email to Miles, and you get to learn a bit more about Murkoff and the Walrider. But for now, that's the end of this video. I really hope you enjoyed, and as always, I will see you next time.